4 interceptions are, you know, just part of his problem. We're going to see in a moment the other part of his problem. Is what the quarterbacks get paid so much for. Gregory hitting him pretty good.
Gregory, of course, led the...
Well, hello. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to check out this video, and welcome to the Gridiron. And first of all, I'd just like to say thank you so much to everybody who's been watching my videos. Maybe subscribe to my channel, maybe give my video a thumbs up, or maybe left a comment, or anything at all. I greatly appreciate it. I'm just trying to get my channel up and running. Anything you guys can do to help my channel out, I greatly appreciate it. So thank you so much in advance. 1931, the 7th season in the history of the New York Football Giants, and the 12th season in the history of the NFL. 1930, there was 11 teams. All right, 1931, it came down to 10 teams. Basically, the Great Depression was hitting, and some teams just had difficult time financially. They're all just trying to stay afloat, and so it came down to 10, and even one of the teams, which I'll go over in a second, folded like kind of halfway through the season, and they disappeared forever. So there were the 10 teams, okay, were the Brooklyn Dodgers, the New York Giants, the Chicago Bears, the Chicago Cardinals, the Cleveland Indians. This would be the Cleveland Indians' first and only season. The Green Bay Packers, the Portsmouth Spartans. I always have a hard time saying that. And the Staten Island Stapletons, the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, and the Providence Steamrollers. The Providence Steamrollers and the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, this would be their last season in the league. The league from last year, okay, lost the Minneapolis Red Jackets and the Newark Tornadoes. The year before that, there were the Orange Tornadoes, which is up in North Jersey, but then in 1930 they became the Newark Tornadoes, and now in 1931 there are no more. So we lost 2 teams from last year, and the Frankfurt Yellow Jacket, the Providence Steamroller, finished the season, and they were no more. But the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, pretty much halfway through the season, they were 1-6-1, and they scored. In those 8 games, they scored a whopping 13 points. They gave up 99 points, and basically, financially, they just couldn't stay afloat anymore, so they had to disband, and there were no more. Once again, it was the same thing as it was. I mean, every year, the amount of teams were different every year. The amount of games the teams played were different. There was no set schedule, which brings me up. Huge controversy at the end of this season about the scheduling, but I'll get to that in just a bit here. But I mean, like the Chicago Cardinals played 9 games, the Green Bay Packers played 14 games, the New York Giants played 14 games, the Cleveland Indians played 10, the Chicago Bears played 13. They said the Cleveland's, this was their first and last year. There was some cheating going on. I know, hard to believe. Joseph Carr, the NFL president, he was the NFL president from 1921 to 1939. He fined the Bears, the Packers, and the Portsmouth Spartans $1,000 each because they were using college players who were still, they're graduating. The classes had not graduated yet, so they were still in college, and you were not allowed to use players from college. I mean, as soon as they graduate, they can do whatever they want. I mean, there was no draft in 1931, so once their classes graduated, they could play pro football, but they could not be, even if they maybe finished their schooling, if their classes had not graduated, they were not allowed to play in the pros. And the 3 teams that were using players, so they were kind of, like cheating, and they paid a fine. $1,000 back then was a nice chunk of money. The Giants, was not such a good season. In 1930, they were 13-4. They finished in second place. They scored 308 points in 1930. They only gave up 98 points. 1931, they were 7-6-1. They wound up in fifth place. Basically, their defense was just as good. I mean, they only gave up 100 points. The year before that, they gave up 98. So, I mean, their defense was still pretty good. The problem was their offense. 1929 and 1930, the Giants scored over 300 points both those seasons. 1931, they only scored 150 points. So basically, they scored about half as many points as they had the previous two seasons. Not going to get it done. I mean, things started off okay for them. They started off 1-0. Then, unfortunately, they lost their next 3 games to fall to 1-3. Then they won the next 4 games. They were all at home, and they won them all by shutout. So they wound up 5-3 at one point, and still kind of statistically had an outside shot at the title. I mean, the Packers and the Spartans, the Portsmouth Spartans, were in the league like all the way. But toward the end of the season, 3 losses would have got you really close to a championship. So the Giants at one point were 5-3, but then, unfortunately, they lost their next 3, and then they also tied 1. So they went from 5-3 to 5-6-1, and they were totally out of it. The one problem was the past 2 seasons they had like the best player in football. They had Benny Friedman. He was a good runner. He was a good kicker, but he could pass the ball. He led the league the past 4 seasons in passing yards, passing touchdowns, and the team that he was on led the league in scoring points the past 4 seasons. So Benny Friedman was huge, and when Benny Friedman retired, he also was the all-time NFL leader, for a period of time, But when he retired, he was the all-time NFL leader for touchdown passes with 66. Okay, so back then, 66 was pretty good. I know guys can do that in like a season and a half nowadays, but back then, 66 was pretty impressive. Now, Benny, after the 1930 season, he retired, all right, in February of 1931. He became an assistant coach at Yale for the football team. But then in October 26, 1931, he signed a contract to finish out the rest of the season with the Giants. So basically he missed pretty much, the Giants wound up playing 14 games. He played in 9, so he missed the first 5 games. So, they were in trouble after the first 5 games. So they went out and they tried to sign him. He signed a contract to play the rest of the season. He started 5 games. He played in 9. All right. So basically, he was still allowed to coach the Yale football team because the Giants practiced in the morning. Yale practiced in the afternoon after classes were over. And the Giants, for the most part, played football on Sundays. So that's why he was able to finish out the rest of the season, coaching Yale and playing for the Giants. But he was kind of like, I don't know if he wasn't in football shape or exactly what, but, he just wasn't what he was in the years in the past. The 9 games he played for the Giants, he scored 2 rushing touchdowns, and he had 2 passing touchdowns. Now, Benny Friedman, he was huge. The year before that, he had 6 rushing touchdowns, and he had 10 passing touchdowns for the Giants. And the first year he was with the Giants in 1929, he led the league. He had 20 touchdown passes. So his offensive production fell off dramatically in 1931, as, the Giants struggled mightily. They only scored 150 points, and that's one of the reasons why they were 7-6-1. Now comes the interesting part. Where the problems from the scheduling, all right, huge problem here. The Portsmouth Spartans. I'm just going to call them Spartans from now on. All right. Finished the season at 11-3. The Green Bay, they were in second place. Green Bay Packers finished the season at 12-2. Okay. The Packers were 12-1. They finished. Then they went on and they played the Chicago Bears, and they lost that game to make them 12-2. The Spartans thought in the beginning of the season they had like a meeting to go over kind of like scheduling and all of that, and they were writing stuff down on blackboards. It was like a team meeting with the team owners, I guess, were all there trying to write up like scheduling. The Spartans and the Packers had tentatively agreed to play a game at the end of the season in Portsmouth, which is in Ohio. The Portsmouth Spartans thought it was pretty much a done deal. The Packers, on the other hand, thought it was tentative. The Packers argued that there was no contract signed, so they weren't legally obligated to play the game. The Spartans said that many games were played without contract signed, and if it was written like on the blackboard or whatever at this team meeting, most teams agreed just to play the games. Well, it wound up being where they were fighting back and forth, and the Green Bay Packers, after they lost the last game of the season to go 12-3, and the Spartans were 12-2. The Spartans were 11-3. All right. The Spartans wanted to play this final game that they said was written on this blackboard in the summertime. They even went back and asked the other owners. They had to try to remember if this game was written on a blackboard months beforehand, and they couldn't really remember that, whether it was written on before the schedule was figured out, or if it was written on after the schedule was written out. They couldn't come up with any type of agreement. So after the Packers lost, or before the Packers played their last game against the Bears when they lost, Curly Lambeau, the coach of the Packers, said, "We will not play the game." He told the sports writer, "We will not play this game against the Spartans if we lose to the Bears. We will not jeopardize our title." If the Packers wound up winning, then they would have been 13-1, and even if they lost to the Spartans, if they played the game and they lost to the Spartans, it wouldn't have mattered. They still would have been champions. But they refused to play. Even the Packers president, Leland Johannes, he refused to play the game as well too. He said we're not going to play it. We were not legally obligated to play the game. We did not sign a contract, and we are not going to play the game and jeopardize our title. Now, to the fairness of the Packer players, from what I saw online, the Packer players did want to go out to Ohio and play this game, but the coach and the Packers president refused to play the game, saying that they would not jeopardize their title by playing a game, because if the Packers were 12-2 and the Spartans were 11-3, if they did play the next week, and if the Spartans won, Spartans would have been 12-3, the Packers would have been 12-3. That would have set up a playoff game between the two teams, and then whoever would have won that game would have won the championship. But that never happened. This also led to different changes in the way the scheduling of the NFL games. Huge changes. It wound up being where there was like a 3-person council which jotted and down all the games and everything like that, and made it more official. But it took this one incident here where one team said, "Well, no, we agreed to play," and the other team said, "No, we didn't totally agree to play." And of course, Joseph Carr, the NFL president, voted in the favor of the Packers. He said, the game was no contract was written, and he said either the Spartans or the Packers could back out of the game if they wanted to. And the Packers backed out of the game and gave themselves their third straight NFL title. Well, as always, guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to check out this video. You guys stay safe out there, and go Giants. Woo!